What difference does it make? Well, no. Hillary Clinton wants to be our commander-in-chief. I don't know about you, but I think the general and the private should follow the same rules and the same laws. If it's good enough for the private, it's good enough for the private. I'm tired of the political class thinking they've got one set of rules for them and another set of rules for the rest of us, and she is the perfect leading example of this. You know, you may have seen she filed an affidavit. She swore in front of a federal judge under penalty of perjury that she's turned over all of her work-related emails. What that means, one email away from going to prison. She better hope those Chinese hackers don't do a document dump and reveal all of her secrets. Because we all know the only way we're going to get to see her emails is if the Chinese and the Russians share them with us. I know she's buddies with Martha Stewart. Martha may not want to give her decorating tips, but instead she may want to tell her how to survive prison. Orange really is the new black, I guess. But, you know, I didn't just come here to talk and make fun about Hillary Clinton. I came here to talk to you about the challenges we face as a country. What I want to do today is I want to talk about the challenges we face, and then afterwards I want to take your questions. And after that, I'm going to stick around if folks want to come visit one-on-one, if they want to ask their questions in private, if you want to take a picture, or whatever else y'all want to talk about, as long as people want to visit. Now, I want to tell you something that probably isn't a surprise to you. I want to tell you that I think the next election is the most important election of our lifetimes. Now, the reason I say that's not a surprise is I bet you've never heard a politician get up and say, don't worry about the next one. It doesn't matter. You stay home. It really doesn't matter who you vote for this time. They never say that. But this time, it really is the most important election. You look at what President Obama has done to our country. $18 trillion of debt. The EPA trying to regulate water in our backyard. Right now, we've got Obamacare putting bureaucrats between patients and their doctors. They're trying to force Common Core in our classrooms. And the list goes on and on and on. And the worst thing that he is doing, President Obama, in his speeches, in his rhetoric, and his policies, the worst thing that he's doing is trying to change the very idea of America. What I mean by that is he's trying to redefine the American dream. Every time you listen to him speak, you watch his policies, it's all about dividing us. Dividing us by race, by geography, by class, by age, by gender. And it's all about government dependence. It's all about more spending, more regulating, more taxing, more borrowing. They're turning the American dream into the European nightmare. We should at least give Bernie Sanders credit. That's exactly right. He tells her, at least he's honest enough to admit that he's a socialist. Barack Obama and his apprentice-in-chief, Hillary Clinton, they're no better. They're just not honest about it. The reality is this. We've got a record number of Americans on food stamps, a record low participation rate in the workforce. They're celebrating more and more government dependence. That is not the American dream that our parents taught us. We learned about an American dream where our best days were always ahead of us, where the circumstances of our birth didn't determine our outcomes as an adult, where you didn't have to be born in a wealthy zip code to do great things. If you were willing to work hard and get a great education, you could do even better than your parents. I want to tell you why this American dream is so important to me. I want to share with you my parents' experience. You know, my dad, he has lived the American dream. One of 9 children. Grew up in a house without electricity, without running water. Was the first and the only one in the family to get past the 5th grade. I know, because we heard these stories every single day growing up. Good luck trying to get an allowance out of a dad like that. But here's the amazing thing about my parents. Over 40 years ago, the first time they ever got on a plane, my parents came halfway across the world to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. They left behind their parents, they left behind their siblings, their families. My mom was pregnant with me. They never visited America. They never even met somebody who'd come to Louisiana and could go home and tell them what it was like. What the people were like, the food, the culture, anything like that. I try to explain to my kids, they don't understand this. There was no Google. They couldn't go online and search what it was like back then. And yet they came anyway. They came because they were coming to an idea as much as they were coming to a place. They were coming to the idea of freedom and opportunity. They were coming to the American dream. Now, by the way, my parents, they came legally when they came to this country. I know you're not supposed to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. If folks want to come here, they should come legally. They should learn English. They should adopt our values. And when they get here, they should roll up their sleeves and get to work.
Yeah, go back.
If you don't want to be an American, don't come here. We're not forcing anybody to come here. And we should certainly not give people freedoms that they're not willing to grant to everybody else. You know, it is amazing to me. Our president continues to be the divider in chief. I don't know about you, I'm tired of all the divisiveness. We used to proudly call America the great melting pot. Now the left wants to turn us into a salad bowl. Folks, we better not do that. You look to Europe, you see second, third generation immigrants that don't consider themselves part of their cultures. I don't know about you, but I'm tired of the hyphenated Americans. We're not African Americans, we're not Asian Americans, we're not rich Americans, we're not poor Americans, we're all Americans. I know you're not supposed to say this either, but I'm going to say it anyway. We must insist on assimilation. Immigration without assimilation, that's not immigration, that's an invasion. And we must not let that happen in America. But going back to my parents, when they landed here, my mom went on to be a student at LSU. My dad, he came here to work. He didn't know anybody. He was looking for a job. He didn't know any better. He started calling company after company in the Yellow Pages. Finally, he wore down a guy. A guy from a railroad company said, okay, you can start work Monday morning. And I love what my dad said to his new boss. I hadn't even met him yet. I know we got some students here, some younger people here, and I would just tell you, this is one of the worst things you could say in a job interview, what my dad does next. I hadn't even met his boss. And he tells him, that's great, I'll start work Monday. But he says, now look, I don't have a car, I don't have a driver's license, so you're going to have to pick me up on the way to work. Who does that to their new boss? But this guy was so taken by my dad's enthusiasm to work, he did exactly that. 6 months later, I was born. Now, I was what you would politely call a pre-existing condition when I was born. I think just meant my parents' insurance didn't cover me. Now, there was no Obamacare or anything, but I love what my dad did next. He went to that hospital. He went to a women's hospital. He met with a doctor, and this is what he told me. There was no paperwork, no government programs, no contracts. Just two guys talking man to man in a hospital corridor. My dad told him, I'm going to send you a check every month until I pay this bill in full. Shook his hand, and that's exactly what he did. You know, it was a simpler time back then. That's just what parents did. I asked my dad, now, how does that work? How do you pay for a baby on layaway? I mean, if you skip a payment, does the hospital take the baby back? They repossess your baby. What do they do? He tells me, because you were such a bad little baby, we would have skipped a payment if that had been an option. We would have sent you that. He goes, no, you're paid for it. Nobody's coming to get you. The reason I tell you that, my parents, they have lived the American dream. They came here to chase the American dream. They caught the American dream. They lived the American dream. I want my children, and one day I want my grandchildren to live the American dream. I want your children and grandchildren to be able to live that American dream. And that's what this election is about. It's not about saving the Republican Party. It's about saving the United States of America. I'm sure many of you watched the debate last week, and many of you probably were entertained. We had, over a dozen different candidates running for president. And many of you have probably seen many of the candidates. Many of them are coming through Iowa. And you know what? Many of them give great speeches and say great things. You're going to hear lots of folks running for president saying, elect me and I'm going to cut the size of government. Elect me and I'm going to protect the unborn. Elect me and I'm going to fight Common Core. And it sounds great. And it does. And, you know, it's not hard. You can throw out red meat lines. You can give a great speech. That's the easy part. We've got a lot of talkers running for president. We've got a lot of famous names running for president. But, folks, we've got a great talker in the White House today. First-term senator, he never ran anything before we put him in the White House. We can't afford 4 more years of on-the-job training. We need a doer, not a talker. So when folks tell you, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, we have already done that in Louisiana. So, for example, we have cut our state budget by 26%. We have 30,000 fewer state government bureaucrats now working in the state of Louisiana since I took office. Let me tell you something. There will be a lot of people that will tell you that if you elect them, they're going to shrink the size of government spending. We're the only candidate that's actually cut our state budget. There are not 2 candidates that have done that. There is one in this race. But not only that, we have grown our economy. We're a top 10 state for private sector job creation. 8 credit upgrades since I've taken office. We actually have been rated the most pro-life state 6 years in a row since I've been elected governor. We put our own Second Amendment in our state constitution, and we fought for school choice, where the dollars follow the child instead of the child following the dollars. Now, many of you, like me, were horrified at these barbaric Planned Parenthood videos that came out. You know, we've got a bunch of science deniers in the left. They're willing to say everything but the word baby. They talk about specimens and tissue and this or that. But I don't know about you, it was just horrifying to watch this woman eating her salad and drinking her wine and talk about the trafficking of babies' organs as if it were nothing, as if it were a business transaction. Now, Planned Parenthood doesn't do any abortions in Louisiana, but they're trying to open up an abortion clinic in New Orleans. When the first video came out, I said we're not going to issue them any permits. Instead, I ordered an investigation. And we're working, we asked the FBI and the state of Texas to help us. As more of these videos came out over a week ago, we canceled their contract. We kicked Planned Parenthood out of Medicaid in Louisiana, so they're not getting any taxpayer dollars in our state. You know, in that debate, I got asked about Planned Parenthood, and I said something that made the media kind of upset, the left kind of upset. I said, they better hope that Secretary Clinton is elected as the next president. Because under President Jindal, in January 2017, I'm going to send the Department of Justice and the IRS to investigate them and make sure they're not getting 1 penny of our federal taxpayer dollars. Now, after the debate, after I said that, the media came to me and said, Governor, you can't do that. You didn't really mean, you can't really send the IRS and the Department of Justice to go after Planned Parenthood. Don't you want to take that back? So I'm going to be very, very clear. As president, I'm going to send the Department of Justice. I'm going to send the IRS. I'm going to send the EPA. I'm going to send OSHA. I'm going to send every federal agency I can find and think of. I'm hoping the IRS will have time. I know they're busy going after conservative groups. We're going to send every government agency we can find in a Planned Parenthood to put an end to these barbaric practices in the United States of America. So when other candidates get up here and tell you that if you elect them, they're going to shrink the size of the federal government, or if you elect them, they're going to take on ISIS, or they're going to repeal Obamacare, that's great. Speeches are great, but we need a doer, not a talker. And I'll tell you, there's another side to all the things I've done in Louisiana. You ask my critics, you ask the left, you ask, this is what they'll say. They'll say, oh, under Governor Jindal, there's never enough money in state government. We're always cutting state government. And to that, this is what I would say. That is absolutely right. I am guilty as charged. Because, folks, we've got to make a decision. We either measure success in the private sector or the government sector. It is either or. Secretary Clinton, she wants to grow the government sector. And if we allow it to continue to grow, it is going to overwhelm our economy. It is going to eat us up alive. We know that real success is in the real world in the private sector. 7 of the 10 fastest growing counties have been in the D.C. area. That's not sustainable. That's not the real world. That's not the real economy. No wonder these politicians think everything's great. They live in a bubble. it's not enough just to send any Republican to the White House. We need to send somebody who does not need the on-the-job training. We need to send somebody who's ready to hit the ground on day one. We need to send somebody who will do and say the things you're not supposed to do and say. Now, the reason I say it's not enough just to send any Republican. You think about it, we took the Senate, we took the majority last year. What changed? They told us they were going to stop amnesty, they were going to repeal Obamacare. What happened? Well, you saw a few weeks ago, I don't know about you, but I was so frustrated with the Supreme Court. I want to share a little secret with you. Remember, in just 1 week, they rewrote the law for a second time to save Obamacare. So Scalia says that words no longer have meaning in response to that rule. At the end of the week, they decided to try to change the definition of marriage. And so then Chief Justice Roberts says, we're not even reading the Constitution anymore, and we're deciding cases. So in 1 week, they can't be bothered to pick up a dictionary or a copy of the Constitution. That happened to be the week I announced my campaign to be the next President of the United States. So I was here in Iowa, I was at the machine shed, and a bunch of reporters found me right after that second ruling had come out. It had just come out, I got out of my car, and they asked me, Governor, what do you think about this? Now here's the thing, if you ask me a question, I'm going to tell you what I think, whether people like it or not. So they asked me, Governor, what do you think about this? And this is what I said. I said, well, if the court can't be bothered to pick up a dictionary or a constitution, if all they're going to do is follow opinion polls, I said, maybe we could save a couple of bucks and just get rid of the Supreme Court altogether if they're not going to do their job anyway. Now, Hillary Clinton didn't like that. She came to Iowa and criticized me and my idea. And so, just in the spirit of accommodation, I'll say this. If she thinks that goes too far, we could just get rid of 2/3 of the court. There were 3 of those justices that did read the Constitution. Just get rid of 6 of them. We'd still save some money. But the reason I tell you that is there were Republicans in D.C. that were secretly happy the court ruled against us. They view marriage as a distraction. They look at Obamacare and say, we don't want to do the hard work to repeal and replace it. That fight is already over. It's time to move on. Only in D.C. would losing be a good thing. Look, as a Christian, I'm here to tell you that no earthly court can change the definition of marriage as was instituted by God, as being between a man and a woman. Unlike Hillary Clinton and President Obama, I'm not evolving with the polls. And I support federal efforts to restore our 10th Amendment rights and to continue to define marriage as being between a man and a woman. But I'm here to tell you, the left is not just content with our 10th Amendment rights. They're going after our First Amendment rights. And so now they're trying to take God out of the public square. Now they're trying to institutionalize discrimination against Christian businesses and individuals who don't want to violate their sincerely held beliefs. And next they'll be going after the pastors and the churches. So in Louisiana, we passed a Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Couldn't get the legislature to debate a Marriage Conscience Act, so I did an executive order this year, saying in our state we're not going to discriminate against individuals or businesses that have a traditional view of marriage as being between a man and a woman. Well, the ACLU sued us. They were for religious liberty until they were against religious liberty. They used our RFRA statutes to actually go and defend other religious minorities. But when it was Christian business owners being discriminated against, then they showed their hypocrisy. Look, Hillary Clinton told us this was coming. Remember, several weeks ago, a few months ago, she said, those of us that are pro-life need to have our religious views changed. I've got news for Hillary Clinton. My religious views are not between me and Hillary Clinton. They're between me and God Almighty. And I'm not changing them just because she doesn't like them or the New York Times doesn't like them. You know, when Hillary says you got freedom of religious expression, it just means a couple of hours a week. Real religious freedom means being able to live our lives 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, according to our sincerely held beliefs. The Founding Fathers knew this conflict was coming. And that's why they put this right in the First Amendment to the Constitution. There's no freedom of speech or freedom of association without religious freedom, without religious liberty. The left wants to make America into a secular country. They want their vision of America is a vision the Founding Fathers wouldn't have recognized. It's a vision our own parents wouldn't recognize. It's a vision I don't want my children to recognize. I'll say this slowly so that even Hillary Clinton can understand this. The United States of America did not create religious liberty. Religious liberty created the United States of America. I've got a novel idea for 2016. I've got a novel idea for the next election. Let's do something different. As Republicans, what if we endorsed and embraced our own principles for a change? Now, what do I mean by that? Well, Jeb Bush says we've got to be willing to lose the primary in order to win the general election. I disagree with that. Now, let me translate that for you. Let me tell you what the establishment, when they say that, what that really means. What they're saying is hide your conservative beliefs. Try to get the left and the media to like you.
That's worked real well.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Real well.
Look, if we do that again, we will lose again. And we will deserve to lose again. The country does not need us to be a second liberal party or a cheaper version of the Democratic Party. America needs us to stand for our own principles. I'm here to tell you, as your commander-in-chief, I will get 4 things done. First, we'll stop talking about it. We're not going to do a 1,000-page comprehensive bill. We're not granting amnesty. But we will secure the border once and for all. Now, we've got to put an end to these sanctuary cities. I think it's great that Congress wants to defund them. I would go further. I've got a partners in crime package. Let's hold the mayors and the councilmen that are flouting, that are breaking federal law. Let's hold them criminally responsible as accessories for the crimes committed by people who shouldn't be here in the first place. Secondly, we will repeal and replace every bit of Obamacare, giving control back to patients and doctors. And I'm the only candidate that's actually offered a detailed plan how to do that. Third, we will shrink the size of the federal government, grow the private sector economy, so our daughters and our sons can join the middle class instead of becoming dependent on government. And then fourth and finally, we will reinvest in our military. We will stand with our friends and allies like Israel. We will deter our enemies. We will stop Iran from becoming a nuclear power. This is the craziest thing. We've got a president who's declared war on trans fats and a ceasefire with Iran. The largest state sponsor of terrorism. We've got a president of the United States who refuses to be honest with us, to speak with moral clarity and honesty. He won't even say the words radical Islamic terrorism. How can we defeat an enemy if we're unwilling to name this enemy? He goes to the Pentagon the same week they're cutting 40,000, they announced they're going to cut 40,000 troops. And he says, we're not going to win this battle with guns. He says, this is a generational conflict. We're going to have to change hearts and minds. I'm so glad that Generals Patton and Eisenhower didn't have that approach during World War II. The French would be speaking German today if we had taken that attitude. You know, Mr. President, sometimes it does take guns to hunt down and kill these evil, radical Islamic terrorists that are bent on evil, that want to kill us. We've got to hunt them down and kill them before they kill us. I'm looking for a commander-in-chief who will say to Muslim leaders, Islam has a problem. And that problem is radicalism. And they've got to do more than condemn generic acts of violence. They've got to condemn the individuals by name that are responsible. Say these are not martyrs. We're going to enjoy a reward in the afterlife. And it will say to those same Muslim leaders, they need to embrace the same freedoms for others they want for themselves. You know, we need a commander-in-chief who will stop apologizing for America. Stop criticizing America. Stop criticizing medieval Christians and warning us about the Crusades. I've got a deal for the President of the United States. I will defend my own children against Oreos and microwave popcorn. If he will do his job and defend our country against the evil, against the threat that is radical Islamic terrorism, let's take the political handcuffs off the Pentagon and the military. Let's finally get this job done. Let's hunt them down and kill them all together. is late for America. We are indeed the greatest country in the history of the world. But America is slipping away right in front of us. That incredible American dream that brought my parents here over 40 years ago, it is slipping away. And it may not be here for our children and grandchildren unless we take action right now. What do I mean by that? Every day we look around us and it is slipping away. We've got a border we won't secure. We've got $18 trillion of debt. We've got an EPA that wants to regulate the water in your backyard. We've got Obamacare that's making health care more expensive and taking away our freedoms. We've got a president who won't stand with Israel, yet is about to give billions of dollars to Iran to further support their terrorist causes. Everywhere you look, radical Islam's on the rise. China's on the rise in Asia. Russia is in eastern Ukraine. Everywhere you look, it seems like America's slipping away a little bit by a little bit, slipping away from us. Well, I'm here to tell you that's not inevitable. I'm here to tell you that our best days can still be ahead of us. I'm here to tell you that if we will work together, we can get our country back. I'm here to tell you that this century can indeed belong to the United States. Ronald Reagan described America as a shining city on the hill. But he also reminded us that every generation has to choose for itself to renew those principles of freedom. Previous generations have spilt great blood and treasure so we could have the privilege of living in the greatest country in the history of the world. Now it is our time to choose what we will do for our children and our grandchildren. Winston Churchill said you can always count on the American people to do the right thing after they've exhausted every alternative. After 7 years of President Obama, it feels like we've exhausted every alternative. I'm not asking people just to join a campaign. I'm asking you to join a cause. I'm asking you to believe again and to believe again in America. When I was young, my dad taught me that America could do anything. I believed him then, and I believe him now. And I think you believe that as well. And I think you want to believe again, but you've been frustrated by these last 7 years. Our founding fathers understood a profound truth. The genius of America is not in our government. They created a limited government to safeguard, but not to create our God-given rights. They understood the genius of America was the freedoms. The freedoms we have for entrepreneurs to create something from nothing. The freedom for moms and dads across America to raise their children according to their values. That's what's at stake in this election. I'm asking you to believe again. I'm asking you, let's take action before it's too late, before America does slip away. I'm asking you to join our cause. Go to bobbyjindal.com. Talk to our volunteers here today by working together. Let us fight to take our country back. Let us rescue the American dream for our children and grandchildren. Let us do what every generation has done before us. Let us leave more opportunities behind than the ones we inherited from our parents. God bless y'all, and thank y'all very, very much for coming. Now, I'd like to hear from you, and I'd like to take your questions on anything and everything. Doesn't have to be on anything I've talked about. Yes, sir.
How do you shrink a government when most of the workers have a contract in hand that makes it almost impossible to fire?
That's a great question. So the question was, how do you shrink a government when so many of the workers have a contract that makes it impossible to fire them? Well, a couple of things. You know, in Louisiana, they said, well, you can't get rid of state employees. We've got civil service. We've got this. You know, you can slow the growth rate, but you can never really shrink the government. I said nonsense. And if all we do is slow the growth rate in D.C., we are done. We've got to shrink, not slow the growth rate. A couple of things we've got to do. One, I think you've got to change the rules. Because we keep sending Republicans and things don't get better. Republicans spend more money than we've got. Democrats spend even more money than the Republicans. You know, it's really going to change when you have a balanced budget amendment in the Constitution. It's really going to change when it takes a supermajority to raise our taxes, a supermajority before they can grow government faster than they grow the private sector economy. I think that, and this is a whole other question, I'll come back to this one, we also need term limits, and we need a part-time Congress that lives under the same rules as private elections. Secondly, we've got agencies that have gone out of control. We need to go there and tell them, you're not allowed just to make up regulations. If it has an impact on the economy, Congress has to vote on those. And we have to tell them, look, this is what you're allowed to do, and you're not allowed to do anything else. Unless we give you the explicit authority, you're not allowed to do these things. Because you've got a lot of bureaucrats that think, I'm going to be here long after the politicians, I'm going to do whatever I want. And instead, for example, the Department of Education, they spend billions of dollars on teacher quality programs that don't improve education. Cancel those programs or block grant those dollars to the states. Title I. Make the dollars follow the child and be portable and divisible, or block grant those dollars to the state. Why in the world is the Federal Department of Education blackmailing states into doing Common Core? Why is the federal government micromanaging our children's school lunches? I don't know about you, but my kids come home from school hungry. 2 of my kids stopped taking the school lunch. The third one, I had to buy him lunch and pack his lunch every day. This year, we're just packing his lunch. We said, okay, that's enough. But it's not just the Department of Education. It's the Department of Justice. It's the EPA. It's the IRS. You need a lower, flatter tax code so you don't have all these need for IRS agents and all this investigative power and abuse and discretion. And we also, by the way, we have to be honest with the American people. We've got a bunch of math deniers. Social Security, Medicare, they're going to go broke in 2030 unless they actually start fixing and improving these programs. And the longer they wait, the harder it's going to be. And we've got to do that. But the third thing we've got to do. So secondly, we've got to shrink the government in terms of the discretionary programs as well as the other programs. So the third thing, you raised a very good point. And this has more to do than just spending. So we've had all these scandals, the IRS, the VA, I almost lose track of all the different scandals. When was the last time you actually saw a bureaucrat lose their job, lose their pension, or even get arrested?
Unless they're a big scam.
Well, but even in the big scandals, so the IRS, with the IRS, let me ask you something. So next April 15th, let's say that you went to the IRS and said, I had all my receipts, I had all the paperwork, but I'm sorry, the computer lost it all. All my emails were lost. Good luck with that. They do that, nothing happened. Even in the big scandal, like the VA scandal, how many of them actually lost their jobs? Who's actually gone to jail over the IRS scandal? Who's actually lost their benefits? So you're exactly right. I think it's time to make some examples. Because if that happened, all of a sudden, maybe we wouldn't get all these scandals again and again and again. But we've got to go in there and change the rules. Because right now, the mindset in both the Democrat and the Republican Party is, well, we'll just grow it a little more slowly. That's not going to cut it. D.C. is the only place where if an agency gets $100 and they ask for 110 and you give them 105, they say they were cut. It's not a cut. None of us would consider that a cut in the real world, so you're exactly right. We've done it in Louisiana again. We've got fewer state employees than we've had in decades. And we closed some facilities we didn't need, and we've done hiring freezes, and we've laid off people we didn't need, and we've done other things. And as a result, our private sector economy is growing. But we need to understand it's either or. You either grow the private sector economy or the government economy. You can't do both. And I'm on the side of going the private sector. Yes, sir.
I know you recognized all the veterans in this room, and when I saw the hands go up, there was a lot of gray hair. So I'm saying, probably like me, the veterans also have been paying for Medicare all of their life, all of their working life. But you cannot go to the VA hospitals, and they cannot bill across to Medicare. They have to take it out of the veterans' own pages, and what they do is they take it out of your Social Security, so they're ripping you off. The government has to change that. I don't know why it got set up that way. There may have been some reason, but to me, it does not make sense to not have Medicare available to veterans that are using a VA facility.
Sure. I go even further when it comes to our veterans' health, because we all saw, we were shocked by the scandals that came out over a year ago about the waiting list and the hidden numbers and all the cover-ups. Look, the real answer to this is real simple to me. I think every veteran should get a card, and they should be allowed, and we should pay for it, and they should be allowed to get the best health care wherever it is, whether it's in the VA or the private sector, whether it's doctors or hospitals in the community. And I say that for two reasons. Number one, we talk about entitlements and other programs. This isn't an entitlement. Veterans have earned this benefit. We made a commitment to them Look, the folks that raised their hands earlier when I asked that question, they're the reason we live in the greatest country in the history of the world. They have volunteered to run towards danger, not away from it, so we can live free. And we made a commitment to them, and here's my concern. One, we've got to keep that commitment, but secondly, as your next commander-in-chief, how do I ask anybody in this room to send your children to volunteer for the military when we're not keeping faith with those that came before them? And then secondly, there should never be a veteran that has to wait on a waiting list or has to cross state lines to get their health care. I trust veterans to know what's the best way for them to get health care in their communities, with their doctors, their hospitals. In Louisiana, there was a VA hospital in New Orleans that was destroyed with Hurricane Katrina 10 years ago. There was a university hospital that was also destroyed. So the state and the federal government got together, and I wasn't even governor back then, and they agreed we're going to rebuild these hospitals next to each other so they can save some money on things like laundry or parking or whatever. They try to share their services. It just makes sense. If you're going to build two hospitals, why duplicate everything? Well, the state's hospital, the LSU hospital, the university hospital with Tulane and the private sector, that opened a couple of weeks ago. It opened last week. The VA hospital was supposed to open in time for the 10th anniversary, which will be in a couple of weeks. VA hospital is not going to be open until sometime next year. They're over budget and over time. So my point is this: the veterans shouldn't have to wait. And the best way to fix this is give them that card and allow them to get the best health care. So I think that veterans have earned that and they deserve that. I'm all for cutting government, but I think one of the areas we need to be spending more on is our military and taking care of our veterans. Yes, sir.
I completely agree with your criticism of the Supreme Court, but are you suggesting you're going to ignore the decision of the Supreme Court or depack it, or what are you saying?
Sure. Well, the question was about the Supreme Court. Look, the next president's going to appoint anywhere between 1 and 3 or 4 Supreme Court justices and many more judges. Here's the mistake that Republicans make, I believe. When you think about the court's rulings on marriage and on Obamacare, not one of us was worried or curious or questioned how the 4 Democratic-appointed judges were going to vote. The media never speculated. It was all crystal clear. Of course they were going to vote to rewrite the law. Of course they were going to vote to change it. The only speculation was on Roberts and Kennedy. And it's that way. When was the last time a Democratic-appointed judge woke up and said, surprise, surprise, I'm a conservative. I've evolved. I'm now going to apply the Constitution. It's always the Republicans that disappoint, and there's a reason for that. When the Democrats appoint their justices, when they appoint their judges, they just find the most liberal judicial activists, and they proudly nominate them. And then they try to get Senate Republicans to vote for them. And some of them do. Some of those Senate Republicans roll over and say, well, this guy's not a crook, so I'm going to vote, as if that's the standard. Then when it comes to the Republicans' turn, this is what happens. Too often our presidents try to find somebody that have no records of rulings or writings. And we try to pretend like, well, we don't really know what they think. Why in the world wouldn't we say, of course I'm going to nominate somebody who's going to apply the Constitution? And of course I'm going to look for folks in the Federalist Society or other places that actually aren't there to write the law. You know, we had a Kennedy case in Louisiana. It was a death penalty case for a horrific, horrific crime. Got upheld the entire way, went to the United States Supreme Court, and the court ruled 5-4 against the death penalty. And they didn't say the guy was innocent. They didn't say he didn't do this crime. And I won't give you the details. They're graphic and they're awful. You don't need to, we've got children here. But it was their rationale that angered me. They said there's a growing national consensus against using the death penalty in these types of cases. When was it their job to look at opinion polls? Their job is to apply the Constitution. So, one, I think as the next president, it is my job to find judges who will actually apply the Constitution. And find them with written records and histories of rulings, so there are no suitors, there are no Kennedys, there are no Roberts, there are no surprises. Secondly, you ask about, well, what do you do after they rule? Well, look, they may have ruled, they may have rewritten the law to try to save Obamacare, but I think on the first day, the next president has to undo all of these presidents' illegal unconstitutional executive orders. Whether it's on amnesty or on Obamacare or whatever. And I would do that same executive order I did in Louisiana to make sure the federal government, the IRS, and none of these agencies is going after Christian business owners or individuals or others with a traditional view of marriage. One of the most disturbing questions at the Supreme Court was when Alito asked the Solicitor General for the Obama administration, if we rule the way you want on marriage, what does that mean? Does that call into question the tax-exempt status for these? He was talking about religious schools and other institutions. The Solicitor General didn't say no. He said, yeah, it might. You raise a good point. So can you imagine if the left has, the White House has control of the executive branch, what the IRS, what kind of foolishness they might be doing after our Christian schools and institutions? So absolutely, I would sign that same executive order. I think it starts by having Republicans who are willing to nominate conservative judges that actually follow the law and follow the Constitution. We got a president, we got judges, now we got mayors who simply don't follow the law. You know, the way I was raised, we're a nation of laws. You don't like the law, change the law. I'm governor of a great state. I don't get to ignore the laws. I don't get to say, well, the legislature passed a law, but I'm just not going to follow it. That's not the way we operate in this country. And so I think we've got to get back to a constitutional form of government in this country. Yes, ma'am.
You were talking about judges. Every election cycle we get to vote for judges. Unfortunately, their ideas and their opinions is not well known. So you go in there and you vote, you don't know who you voted for, and then you find out later. I mean, that's how we got to be where we are in Iowa, because judges make decisions. Is there some change that can be done that allows us as the voters to have more of a knowledge base of who we're voting for?
That's a great question. I'll tell you three things. So one, I actually came up here and helped with some of the, I know there was a recall effort after the ruling on marriage in Iowa, and I came in and helped with that. And I know it was successful for a couple of them. And I mean, it's a good, it sends a signal, but obviously it wasn't enough. Secondly, in my state, we elect our judges directly as well. People vote on judges. Every state's got, their own system. And in states like mine where we elect our judges, sometimes people show up and say, oh, we should appoint judges. And in other states where they appoint judges, people show up and say, oh, no, we should elect judges. So my point is, there's never going to be a perfect system, because every state that has their system, there's always people that don't like it and want somebody else's system. One of the things that's worked in Louisiana, there's a group called the Family Forum. And it's a not-for-profit group. It's an interdenominational, so it's a Christian group. And it's got a lot of pastors and volunteers in it. And they started doing something, not just for judges, but they really started this with legislative officials and candidates, but it's kind of spread to other politicians as well. They did a very simple thing. And it's, a lot of states do it, but when they did it, it was revolutionary, because Louisiana, we're a pretty conservative state, socially. And yet we kept getting these bad laws, and people wondered how did it happen. To your point, you go elect somebody, and then go do something you didn't expect. So they started doing these voting guides. And they did these pamphlets, and they would just take, let's say, a dozen votes they thought were important every session. And without any editorial comment, they would simply list how their representatives and senators, and you can do this for judges, how they voted or what their rulings were. They do it mainly for the legislative candidates. And they started distributing these. And a lot of pastors started giving them out in church. Now, they didn't endorse candidates or not endorse candidates, but they just said, boy, they got some politicians mad. Because all of a sudden, these politicians couldn't go to Baton Rouge, vote one way, and then come home and say something else. Because one of the favorite tricks a politician likes to do is say, well, I didn't really vote that way. That was a 1,000-page bill. There were all these other parts to it, so I was really voting for that. And what Family Forum said is, hey, look, we're not editorializing. We're just telling people exactly. And I guess now you wouldn't need pamphlets. You can do it online. But the point was that transparency changed behavior. All of a sudden, Louisiana, the voting workers got a lot more conservative. Because people didn't want to have to go home and explain those votes. And it was very simple. They just picked about a dozen. You can't do 100 votes, but they picked about a dozen. And it was simply yes or no. How did they vote? Or maybe it was about abortion. Or maybe it was about whatever the issue was at that time. Maybe it was about marriage. So, for example, back before I was governor, my state amended the Constitution to define marriage as being between a man and a woman. And they did that when there was a Democratic majority in the House and the Senate and a Democratic governor. Over 70% of the people voted for that. I think a big part of it was because they knew they were going to be held accountable for their votes. So I think you're right. There are things that groups like that can do. Just pick a handful of rulings or votes and the politicians won't like it. They'll come up with 1,000 excuses or reasons. Well, that doesn't have context or doesn't. You know what? They work for us. We don't work for them. We get to hire and fire them, and if they don't like their rulings, they shouldn't make those rulings. The question was my views on the Second Amendment. I'm a proud supporter of the Second Amendment. Like I said, we put our own amendment in our Constitution saying any restriction on gun rights has to survive strict scrutiny by the courts. Lifelong member of the NRA. I was very proud of my first term as governor. I got the NRA's highest legislative award. And let me tell you what I got it for. So in Louisiana, after Katrina, they actually, I don't know how many people saw this, but in New Orleans, government folks and officials went door to door, and they actually confiscated guns from law-abiding citizens. Never thought you'd see it in America. And if you want to see some chilling videos, go to the NRA's website. There was one in particular. There was an older woman in her home, not bothering anybody. She had food, she had water, she was self-sufficient. They came into her home, they knocked down her door, they took her gun away. She was robbed a little while later. Didn't have a gun, couldn't protect herself. She wasn't bothering anybody. She wasn't outside of her home. She wasn't direct. She was inside her own home. So I passed a law in Congress to make sure that never happened again. And again, the NRA came. I'll tell you two quick stories, funny stories about that. So I passed that law, and again, I did that when I was in Congress. But back in 2006, Wayne LaPierre, the head of the NRA, wanted to come to Louisiana and come and go across the state and thank me for this. Because it was a very big priority for them. Now, for those that don't know, he's the head of the NRA. 2006. Now, look, I'm a new member of Congress. That's my first term in Congress. And the head of the NRA wants to come to your district. That's a pretty big deal. And I still remember the date. He wanted to come on August 16, 2006. And the reason I remember that date so well is I remember my wife was pregnant with our third child. And so I came on, this was the dumbest thing I've ever said. Been married 18 years, dumbest. I went to her and I said, now, sweetheart, I'm going to be home the entire month of August. We can have this baby any day but August 16th. That was the one day we didn't have. Well, I think you know how the story ends. That little baby came out. It actually came out at home on August 15th. That was the baby. First baby took 36 hours of labor. Second baby took 24 hours of labor. The third baby took 30 minutes of labor. So it wasn't on purpose. Baby came out at home. It was just her and me at home. And so I was smart enough not to ask her if it was okay for me to go on August 16th. To me, I said, no, I better stay here with her. Because I like being alive and I like being married. I don't want to ask her that. But the second thing I'll tell you, here was the interesting thing after Katrina. I can't tell you how many of my friends came to me. And my wife had a similar experience. You know, look, my boys and I, we go duck hunting. And we have guns in the house. But a lot of times, my wife was one of these. She said, look, we've always had, she's been around guns a lot, but shooting wasn't always her thing. That was the boys thing. We didn't have boys during Katrina, but she said, that was kind of the boys thing to go and do those kinds of things. Well, the interesting thing was after the storm, my wife and a lot of others said, you know what, I want to learn how to shoot. I'm just to be, if God forbid, if something ever happened, I've got to make sure that I can protect myself and I'm not sitting there by myself. And so we go out to the firing range, and this was one of the worst. Now, guys, this is one of the worst things you can ever hear. The instructor comes back after she's done and says, Bobby, your wife is a better shot than you are. And here's the reason why. When I go to a shooting range, I tend to cluster my shots to the left and a little bit below. They're clustered, but they're left and below their target. My wife, the first time she shot wasn't that great. The instructor told her what to do. She did it, and she started hitting dead at the center. Well, and the state police will tell you that when they're training new cadets, they say the guys like me who think we know what we're doing, we're hard-headed. We think, oh, I've been shooting, I know what I'm doing. She knew she didn't know. It was easier for her to take instruction. I misspoke. I said we had our first boy during Hurricane Katrina, but we didn't have our second boy. He's the one that came afterwards. So I'm a strong believer in the Second Amendment. It's amazing to me, these judicial activists, they keep trying to invent things that aren't there in the Constitution, but they ignore the black letter of the law. I'm a big believer in the Second Amendment, but even if you don't, you can't ignore what's in the Constitution. If they don't like it, they should try to change it and stop trying to take away our gun rights.
Also, I respect you during that time when I was on there.
Well, thank you.
And,
No, you mentioned the incident in Lafayette. I'll just say this. Those families, no family ever wants to lose a child. Those families humbled me with their prayers, with their faith, with their grace, with their love. It's just amazing. I hope none of us ever has to be in that experience. The way they responded was amazing. But you're right, too many times folks try to score cheap political points out of these tragedies. I actually got mad at a reporter, less than 24 hours after they were trying to make this report on me. I said, stop. That's not what this was. We need to focus on these families. And the community's coming back together stronger than it was before. Those are great God-fearing people, and nobody wants to go through that, but they have come back united. Yes, sir.
I'm glad you're here from the great state of Louisiana. As a Vietnam vet, I served with a very valiant lieutenant, veteran.
Oh, that's all right. That's where my wife grew up.
Yeah. And as a vet, I've got two questions. The first one, I'm afraid for my country, especially when the enemy is here. How would you take on this ISIS peril? And more importantly, as you know, our Army, our Air Force, our Navy, Marines are at the lowest level before World War II. Look at that in fighting. Secondly, I think the most important issue in this election, and it'll raise all boats, this country has lost its wealth. We import more than we export. We don't make anything anymore. How would you restore America's wealth and making new wealth?
That's great. Well, first of all, thank you again for your service. Vietnam veteran, thank you very much for doing that. Two great questions. One, how do we defend our country, especially when the enemy may already be here, and especially the cuts in the military? And then secondly, about how do we restore our wealth? We're importing too much. We don't make enough things in our country. First, on the military. So I put out a detailed defense plan saying we need to get back to 4% of our GDP investing in our military. We're going to have fewer troops than any time since before World War II. Older and fewer planes and ships at a time when China is investing in a blue water navy. At a time when Russia's modernizing their nuclear arsenal, at a time when Iran wants nuclear capabilities. Peace through strength works. This president has it exactly backwards. He thinks if we hide from the bad guys, they will leave us alone. That never works. Weakness is provocative to evil. You know, Reagan deployed our troops less frequently than presidents before him and after him, because people feared and respected the United States.
Right.
ISIS, we're going to keep getting lone wolf recruits if we don't do two things. One, ISIS exists because they can hold on to land. It's a recruiting bonanza for them. They claim they're rebuilding this caliphate. We've got to take away their ability to do that. And that means we've got to arm and train the Kurds. Stop being politically correct about this. That means we've got to encourage our Sunni allies. They don't trust us anymore. They worry when we draw a red line and we don't enforce it. They worry if they beat ISIS, that'll just strengthen Assad and Iran. They want to know, is America really committed to success? Or are we going to cut and run over? And third, we've got to take the political restrictions off the military. So this president goes to the Congress and says, I want a 3-year time ban and I want a ban on ground troops. Look, I will never send our troops into a fair fight. I want our troops to dominate any potential conflict. You can't deploy the military unless you give him every support and resource and strategy to win. He has now twice admitted he has no plan for victory, no strategy. And then somebody from the White House says, well, he didn't really mean what he said. That's the second busiest guy in D.C. The guy that does that for Joe Biden's the busiest guy. Can you imagine having that job? The second thing we've got to do is we've got to insist, and I know this is not politically correct, and I've said this before. When I say this, people say, oh, that makes you anti-Muslim or, colonial, and they say you've got a colonial mindset or culturally arrogant. That's ridiculous. We've got to stop letting people into this country who want to use our freedoms to undermine other people's freedoms. It is ridiculous. We've got to be willing to say, look, if you want to come here, you've got to want to be an American. And you've got to respect other people's rights and freedoms and liberties as well. I think you're absolutely right in terms of growth. And I think that, I've talked about what we need to do to shrink the size of government as an obstacle to growth. But we also need to lower and flatter tax code. We can't have the highest tax rates in the developed world. The last time we had successful tax reform was under President Reagan in the late 80s, where both sides had to give up their special carve-outs and their exemptions. Today, if you've got a lobbyist, you pay probably a lower tax rate than the rest of us. That's not the way it should work. Secondly, in addition to a lower, flatter tax code, we need to have a real energy plan. On all of the above plan. I'll put out a detailed energy plan. With affordable energy, we can bring manufacturing jobs back into this country. In my state, we brought $60 billion for private capital investment, 90,000 good-paying jobs. And we're talking through economic development plans. I'm talking about the steel industry, and the fertilizer industry, and the petrochemical industry. And with many of these plants, we had to fight the EPA to convince these companies to invest in America. You're right, too many of these jobs are going overseas. Newport, a steel company, wants to spend over $3 billion in my first term, hiring 1,250 employees, $75,000 a year. After the 2008 election, they became scared of the EPA, and they said, well, we might have to go to Brazil instead. How does that help our economy? How does that help the environment? Our laws are tougher than theirs. Now, we fought and we convinced them to come here. They've built the first phase already, and now they're looking at the next 4 phases. But we can have those jobs here if we'll build the Keystone Pipeline, if we'll allow energy production on our federal lands and waters, if we'll get the EPA out of the way. I think more affordable energy is the key to those. We're talking about $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 blue-collar jobs with benefits that don't require 4-year degrees for the most part. Those are the kinds of jobs you can build an economy around. Every one of those jobs, 2, 3, 4 indirect jobs. Those are good paying jobs, not minimum wage jobs. We need to repeal Obamacare so we take away the uncertainty, the taxes. I talked to an employer today who said he is purposely not expanding. He says, look, I've got the business to add half a dozen more employees, but if I get over that threshold, all of a sudden I get all these new costs and regulations. And I told him, as his name is Jerry, I said, Jerry, that's happening all over the economy. You multiply that, and small businesses will create the majority of jobs in this economy. Look, America can compete again. We can own this century. We're like a fighter who's fighting with one hand tied behind our back. It reminds me of the late 70s under Carter, the stagflation and all the other miseries. But when Reagan let us go and he cut taxes, cut regulations, remember the boom that we had? That can happen here as well. So in some ways, I think we're punching below our weight. You untie that second hand, boy, get out of it. We can compete with anybody. But we better do those things. Lower flatter taxes, more energy, get rid of Obamacare, rein in the regulators, shrink the size of the federal government, and I wouldn't bet against us. I think we could beat anybody.
Governor, we have time for one more.
Yes, ma'am.
With all the financial incentives for the illegal aliens, how do you think, or what do you think you could do to secure the border to keep them out?
That's a great question. The question was, with all those financial incentives for people to break the law and come here, how do you actually keep them out? Two things. One, Congress is the only place in the world where they say, look, we've done something. You can tell we've done something because look at how much money we've spent. Instead of this 1,000-page bill, they try to convince us, you know we secured the border because we spent a bunch of money on it. That's not how you know the border's secure. The way you know the border's secure, let the border state governors tell you. They live with these consequences every day. I went there to go see it myself because last year they sent over 1,000 what they call unaccompanied minors, these children, to Louisiana. Now we're close to 2,000. We come here illegally, and they never told us where they were or who they were being sent to, and they just told us there won't be a cost, don't worry about it. Well, that was nonsense. We spent millions of dollars just in our schools alone, and they showed up late in the summer, so we didn't have time to prepare for it. Can you imagine if you're operating a school system and all of a sudden you've got a bunch of new kids nobody warned you about in Jefferson Parish? They had to find teachers that could speak Spanish because a lot of the kids didn't speak English, and they had to pay for it out of their existing budget. So I went to go see for myself. I saw 3 groups come across. They weren't sneaking across. I don't know about you, but in my mind, every time I'd never seen the border. When I pictured it, I pictured border agents and fences and barbed wire and patrols. There was the Rio Grande, and on the American side there was a bunch of sugar cane. And so I saw 3 groups. One group waded across the Rio Grande where it was shallow. Another group floated across. The third group really got my attention. Now remember, I was with law enforcement. I was in a boat. I was in a helicopter, I was on the ground, and we were always clearly marked. We weren't hiding. Our boat had black and white stripes. We had, sirens on the trucks. They had badges and guns. We were trying to send a message. This is law enforcement. And every time we saw something, we called Border Patrol. Hopefully they'd, come and do something about it because they had jurisdiction. Well, the third group, there's a man-made dam right there. And on the Texas side, it's got on the American side, as you come across from Mexico, there's a gate. There's like a big fence and a tall fence and a gate. So we see this group walking across, and they're not taking their time. We're sitting here in a boat looking at, we called Border Patrol. We're just watching them from below, and they're just walking across. They're not running. They're just walking across. I think, well, the gate will slow them down. Well, they'll get to that gate. They won't be able to, they'll at least buy some. They might climb over, but it'll take some time. It's a pretty tall gate. They get to the gate. They swing it wide open. They hadn't even bothered. Nobody even bothered to lock the gate. So what's the point? Is it there just for show? Like you can't put a padlock on this gate? My point is, they're not even, right now, there are many of those areas of that border where they don't have to sneak across. You only know it's secure once the border state governors certify. And there's a Democrat in California, there are Republicans in the other states. So it's not a partisan thing, but make them all certified secure and it's state secure, secondly. I think you've got to require companies to verify the people they hire are actually here legally. And so there are things like E-Verify and these other systems. Let's make those mandatory and actually make them work. The Republican Party says we don't want to be the party of big government, and that's good. We shouldn't be. We can't be the party of big business either. Now let's be honest. There are a lot of big businesses that want amnesty, that want Common Core, that want special tax perks in the tax code. Folks, this election is also about, it is about growth. That is exactly right. It is about restoring the American economy, but it is also about those on the left, those elites that think they know how to run our lives better than we do. And there are elites in the Republican Party that think that too. They don't think we're smart enough to pick how our kids are educated. They don't think we're smart enough to know better than Common Core. They don't think we're smart enough to have Second Amendment rights or First Amendment rights, religious liberty rights. If you live in New York, they don't think you're smart enough to know how many sodas you're supposed to drink every day. They want to run your lives. And there are folks like that in the Republican Party, just as there are folks like that in the Democratic Party. And neither one of them is right. Just because they call themselves Republicans doesn't make them any better. This election is about taking our country back. I'll close with where I started. Our best days are ahead of us. We must not let the idea of America slip away. We will be the next Greece. The difference will be this. The EU can rescue Greece. Nobody can rescue America. We're the last hope for the free world. There's nowhere to go from here. This is the hope for the rest of the world. But the good news is it's not too late. Working together, we can bring America back. Please join our cause. God bless you. Thank you.
Well, we are based out of the DC area.
Thanks for coming out.
No, thank you for coming out.